Welcome, everybody. I'm Todd Baginski, and I'm joined by an awesome group of people here today to bring you the April 15, 2020 PowerApps Community Call. Thanks for tuning in. We've got a lot of great information for you here this month, and we really hope you enjoy it. In case you have not joined our PowerApps Community Call, let me tell you a little bit about it. We meet every month. We meet on the third Wednesday of every month, and it is at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Our next meeting will be next month in May on the 20th. During this call, we always get great people in here who are doing things with Power Apps and associated technologies. And we talk about the latest news and community contributions with these technologies. We meet the product teams behind Power Apps. And we also have technical deep dives on all sorts of cool tips and tricks and things you can learn and put to use as you develop Power Apps. Today, what we're going to talk about is this following. We're going to introduce today's team, bringing you this call, and then talk about training, or otherwise known as enterprise upskilling. And we're also going to talk about an awesome pop-up component that is about to be open source that everyone can use to make pop-ups in their Power Apps consistent and easy to do. We're also going to talk very in-depth about Azure Application Insights and how you can use that with Power Apps. It's a brand new feature that was just lit up in Power Apps about a month ago. As I talked about before, we always cover our recent news and community activities, and we have Q&A throughout the call. So here's our awesome hosts. That's me on the left. I'm Todd Baginski, and my company is called Canvas, where I'm a partner in the CTO. You can find me on YouTube, on my blog, as well as on Twitter. And then we also have Charles Sterling, or Chuck. Good morning. How are you today, Chuck?
I'm doing good, Todd. Thanks for having me again.
Awesome. Thanks for being a part of it here. And so we also have on our call all these awesome folks who I like to call our Power Apps community chat channel gurus. These people include MVPs, Power Apps champions, and self-proclaimed Power Addicts like myself and practically everyone on this call. So I like to say thank you to all these folks who come here every single month and help unblock people and answer questions. We really appreciate you, and so does the whole community. We have a community giveaway. As I mentioned last month, I reached out to the folks at TechSmith because I found out they were giving away prizes if you had a webcast or something. So last month, we gave away our prize, and Dawid van Heerden, I think is how you pronounce his name. I found he joined our call. I'm not sure if Gerard is in the call here today. I'll take a quick look here. Turns out I don't see him in our call today, but I did touch base with him and sent him his cool TechSmith swag. So again, this month, I've got a cool coffee mug, stickers, and a Snagit and Camtasia license for one lucky winner in this call. So we will be giving that out and contacting that person at the end of the call. All right. All you have to do is show up, and you're registered for that one. So I'm going to hand it over to Dona now. This is the first time Dona's joined us on the call. Thanks for being here today, Dona.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Bright and early for those of us on the West Coast, but thank you for those of you around the world who stayed up to take this call with us.
So you're here to tell us about training today.
I'm here to talk to you about more than training. It's more of this concept called upskilling. I have spent the last 6 months since October traveling around the world, and I've met many of you in person. So thank you for being so welcoming in the cities that we found each other at. And thank you for talking to me so much about this thing that I'm intensely passionate about, which is technical upskilling. I've always believed that one of the most important things in the world to equalize all of us in the world is technical training. I come from a very let's say, not very well-off background from Detroit, Michigan, in the U.S., which has got one of the lowest literacy rates and one of the highest crime rates in all of the U.S. And it's only because I studied computer science and learned coding have I been able to have this life that I consider to be pretty amazing and extraordinary. Definitely not common for people who grew up where I did. So for the last 20 years, I've been intensely passionate about ensuring that other people have this kind of opportunity. So you'll find me around the world at all kinds of events in all kinds of countries. I spend a ton of time in Africa. So some of the places that you'll see me a lot is Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, South Africa. And you'll find me a lot in Latin America and the more rural parts of Asia. And the reason I do that is because it's not that the people who live there don't want technology or don't care about technology. They just don't know about all of the things that are available to them. Because most companies, they tend to do most of their advocacy and marketing in places that we've all heard of. They tend to do most of it in North America as well as Western Europe and Australia. So one of my goals is to equalize that a little bit and spend extra time in the more emerging parts of the world. So for the last, I would say 10 years or so, I've been on this mission that everyone in the world should learn to code. Everybody, it doesn't matter. It should be your kids, your grandparents, your accountants, your lawyers, everyone in the world should learn to code. And over the last year or so, it's become really obvious that that is actually a really stupid goal. It's not going to happen. In this picture, it's me helping a young woman learn to code in New York City during the hour of code. She picked it up right away. She was doing better than her dad, who brought her in about 5 seconds. She is a rare exceptional case who can just pick this up and go with it. For most of us who did not grow up technical, learning to code is quite the project. You need to go to school or go to a boot camp, have a very powerful group of people around you to ask questions to a network with. And it's a commitment. It's a commitment to figure out what language to learn, how to build up your repertoire, how to build up your GitHub profile, what kind of jobs to apply to. But that doesn't mean that learning technology is not important. Just the way we learn it, learning to code, is not necessarily the only thing. All of us are on this call because we believe in this mission of less code, more power, where we believe that you don't really need to have a lot of code to achieve great things, whether that's building the business app for your company, whether that's building a chatbot to answer your customer questions, whether that's using AI to process thousands of forms that would be really annoying to process by manual labor. We all believe that this is all doable with less code. And what I would love is for us to use what we know to help other people who are like us. And that doesn't mean getting on planes and traveling around the world unless you want to. It's more helping the people who are relevant to you and your communities. So one of the things that's happened recently is I've had a lot of companies reach out, and a lot of companies, organizations, universities, colleges reach out and say, hey, we want to do this power platform, less code, more power thing. We see a lot of tutorials online, a lot of training online, but do you have anything that's guided, like an academy? Because people that we work with are used to 101, 102, 103. They can do the choose your own adventure once they have a bit more experience, but the first few months that they're learning, they want something more guided. And I say, yeah, of course we do. We have this Microsoft Learn thing. And people say, oh, I didn't even know about this. So Microsoft Learn is a thing. It's a big learning platform by Microsoft. It's completely free. We spend a lot of work curating the content and the training for Microsoft Learn. One of our customers, Sterling Bank in Lagos, Nigeria, liked Microsoft Learn so much that she actually created a curriculum for her company. So Sterling Bank has 10,000 employees, and Foyen, who I think is on the call, Foyen heads up their citizen devs department. She discovered Power Platform kind of by accident after asking a question on an online forum, dug deep into it, and set up the first Power Platform user group in Nigeria, which has now grown to 250 people. And now they have a second one in Nigeria, and soon a third, a fourth, a fifth. So she created this curriculum for Sterling Bank, specifically to upskill people who are not necessarily technical. And you can see that it's pretty structured. It's module 1, learn Power Apps. Module 2, do more stuff with Power Apps. And she goes all the way to learning Power Apps and Power Automate. And at the end of it, the goal is that people graduate feeling the sense of achievement. And you can see she's got a bunch of very practical projects in there. Lab 1, my expense app. Everyone has to do their expenses. Lab 2, this thing. Lab 3, build an app specifically for your business. I thought her academy that she's created out of existing content was really, really interesting, because she's not getting into the business of content creation. She's getting into the business of content curation specifically for her audience. So I liked this so much that I asked her to share with me this PDF. And then I do what all engineers do. I promptly stole it. So this was my Stack Overflow version of things. So I stole it. And last night I said, you know what? I want to share what I stole from Foyen and wrote down as a way that I use to upskill people who reach out to me with all of you today. So I created just this basic blog post. I took what Foyen had in her PDF, linked up to all of the Microsoft Learn stuff, and then added a few more modules that I thought would be interesting to all of you. So I've taken the Power Apps and Power Automate that she made. Then I added on some Power Virtual Agent, some AI Builder, and a little bit of Power BI. And these are actually the modules that I've used to learn the Power Platform on my own. I've been quickly trying to learn every aspect of the Power Platform while I go around and visit all of you, so I can speak with some level of non-stupidity. And what helps me a lot is to see everything in one place. I love Choose Your Own Adventure when there's a specific problem that I'm trying to solve, but when I'm not sure what I want to learn or what exists, I like to see everything in one place. So I wrote this blog post pretty much for myself and for people in the world who may need a little more guided training. The link is there, aka.ms Power Playlist. This is the first time I'm sharing it because I wrote it last night at midnight, and that's how I share things. Write, co-create, share. So what I would love is for you to take a look, give me feedback on what I'm missing. And just keep in mind, this is very one-on-one training. This is not a comprehensive list of everything that exists. If someone is brand new to Power Platform, if there's a company who's trying to upskill their 10,000 construction workers, which is a real company in Australia, or if there's a company in Iowa in the US who are trying to upskill all of their farmers, which is a real company, where should they start? What are good places for them to start? We know that once people get into the Power Platform, they go off in 1,000 different directions and they solve their own problems. And it becomes this amazing thing where the content consumer becomes the content creator. But where do people start? So I would love your feedback. That's call to action number one. So this is Power Playlist. So Power Playlist is the YouTube channel that my co-host Sarah Critchley and I have on the show we have on Channel 9 as well as YouTube called LessCodeMorePower. This is on the Power Apps YouTube channel. And we've recorded about, I would say, 15 to 20 episodes already. We're rolling them out once every 2 weeks. And you can see some very familiar faces in the shows. You're going to see a lot more familiar faces as they keep rolling out. We started off kind of slow with a few community members, and then we said, we're just going to call everyone in the world to do this. So the call to action for you is, one, check the show out. Second, if you have a cool demo, let me know, because we do want guests on the show. You can see that many of our guests dial in virtually. And right now, given that we're all kind of sequestered at home, we're going to shoot virtually. So right after I hang up with you, Sarah and I are actually shooting 5 episodes of Less Code, More Power from Skype, actually from the comfort of our own studios and homes. And we've got 5 guests who are going to be dialing in remotely. So if you've got a cool demo to show, just hit me up. We love for our guests to come on, share their story of Power Platform, and then show something interesting for the audience. So you're dialed into this call, therefore you have something interesting to show. So third, all of you know about the community forums. I'm sure all of you answer a ton of questions on there. What I would love for you to do is, as you go out, upskill people or hear about people upskilling, please make sure to point them to the forums. I found that a lot of people don't know about them until they have to ask a question. And usually they get directed to the forums by someone they know. So please do point them to the forums as both a place to ask questions, but also see a bunch of really great video and blog content. So just call to actions, 3 of them. And then 4. And then the 4th one is, tell us what more you need, because I don't actually know what your communities need. Like, for example, I don't know what David's community needs in South Africa. I don't live there. I don't know what someone might need in Jakarta. I don't live there. I try my best to get out into the world, but given all of the travel restrictions this year, it's not as possible. And even if it was possible, I can't be in all of the countries in the world despite my best efforts. So if there are tech upskilling things that your community needs that you're not getting, that don't exist, or that you think do exist, but Microsoft should do a more comprehensive job of, just reach out and let me know. This is very much my job, and it is such an honor to be here this morning with you and co-create this tech upskilling for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna. That's awesome how you pulled all that information together and built that little academy right there. I get that question all the time from people like, hey, how do I get started with this? And I think the way you just packaged that up made it easier than ever.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
That is awesome. We'll keep an eye on the chat here too, because there's always a lot of people. I think there's over 100 folks on the call right now, so you might want to keep an eye on there. You might find out, connect with some friends in there, or maybe get some of those suggestions you were looking for right off the bat. That's outstanding. All right. Thanks again for taking your time to come and share all that with us today. I'm sure you've helped a lot of people out. So we're moving on to the next part of our call now. And in our next part of the call, Dawid's joining us here today, and he is going to show everyone an incredible pop-up component that he created for PowerApps. And I've been lucky enough to see this behind the scenes a little bit, and I know Sancho has as well, and I see him on the call. So Dave, I'll let you take it over here and tell us all about this sweet pop-up component.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Todd, and thanks for having me on the call. So my name is Dawid van Heerden. I'm Modern Workplace Director at upskilling Solutions in sunny South Africa. And so we've been working on something with Sancho and Todd. Guys, thank you very much for all your help. You really helped to polish this thing. I just have to mention that if anything on this thing looks awesome, it was probably Sancho who did it. And then also just Sancho being nominated an MVP last week or the week before. Congratulations, Sancho. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, way to go, man.
Right, so let's get cracking. What is a modal dialog, or a pop-up, or a message box, or a dialog? Some people refer to it in different terms, but essentially it is a way for an application to either display information to the user just for informational purposes, or to make sure that the user confirms an action. So a good example of that would be if you're about to delete something from a database, to basically just get a confirmation from the user that they know what they're busy doing. And then the third one is to actually get information back from the user. So a good example of that would be a people picker, where that uses your global address list, where you can select somebody from a list of addresses and then use that information somewhere in your app. Now, up to now, there hasn't been an out-of-the-box option for that in PowerApps. And so typically it forced makers to have to create a lot of controls in an app. I'm sure everybody on this call has got a lot of experience in that, where there's many controls that you have to style and group together, and then you have formulas to hide these things away in the app and then make them pop up when something happens. But the problem with that is it's very time consuming. Every time you need a new message, essentially you create a new pop-up. Or in a lot of the cases that I've seen, that is the case. It's extremely difficult to move these things around between apps. You can't reuse it properly. And it's also virtually impossible to go back into your older applications and go and upgrade all of the methods or all of the components that you've used. Right, so what is the answer? The generic model dialog component. Right, so this is basically a component that has all of the controls grouped and contained inside of it, and that allows you to have a uniform design for pop-ups across all of your apps. And you never have to touch the design of this thing if you don't want to. You can use it as it is. So the moment you don't customize this, you can make sure it's uniform across all your apps, and it's very easily upgradable. And that's a very good point as well. It's also very easy to add to new apps or existing apps without having to go through all of those styling and formula headaches. And then also it allows you to consolidate your business logic, rules, and actions, which is a very key point, because typically the moment you start touching these hard-coded pop-ups, then you have to redo the logic if you upgrade them to newer patterns. All right, so how does it work? And before we get started with that, it's important to realize that a Power App and the component is very separate things. Even though they live together, there's a lot of restrictions on things that you can't pass between a Power App and a component and vice versa. But what we found was that both of these entities could talk to collections just fine. And that gave us the vehicle to actually pass instructions from the Power App all the way through to the component. And then the component would do what it needs to. And if there's a response that needs to come back to the Power App, it would write an entry in back into a collection. And then we'll have a toggle. And this is a trick that I've learned from Todd a couple of months ago. Essentially, we used to use timers for this, but the toggles just work so much better. And what the toggle then does is it goes and checks what is the input from the component, and then it fires off certain actions to go and set variables or basically do anything that you could do from a normal Power App. All right, so demo time. Let me quickly get a screen share going here. All right, so on my screen, I've got a very standard Power App. And on here, we've got 3 buttons. The one is send picture to manager. Now, typically, if you click on this, because it's to your manager, you want to make sure that the guy actually sends this thing, right? So you'll see that we've got a text label that just asks the question. We've got a yes and a no button. If we click on no, it's not going to do anything. But if they click on yes, it's actually going to go off and send that email. And then you'll see message was sent. And there's the toggle just by the way who's doing all of this. So if you watch it, you can actually see it flick as you send commands to it. So the next thing is rating the coffee. So if you rate the coffee, it's going to bring up this rating control, and you can go and specify the properties for this. So let's say we're going to give it a 4 out of 5, and then click on OK, and that's set the rating variable right in the main app. Last one is we're going to use a text array to create a drop-down for the user to choose from. So here they can choose one or more than one or multiple selections of a specific text array. And you'll see in addition to this, there's a link that's being passed to the pop-up as well. And this link could be basically take the user back to SharePoint, to an HR policy, or a help video, or whatever that'll give the user more information about this actual thing that you're asking from him or her. And if we now click on OK, you'll see it jumps back to the main app, and then it wrote the response into the application. Right, so if I go into the design of this, you'll see that it's actually quite simple and quite easy to do as well. So if I go into the code for these buttons, you'll see that we're writing a record. So this is the record that this button is writing into a dialog instructions collection. And this is what formats that dialog or the component accordingly. So you'll see for the yes, no, we really need basic information. The type is a yes, no, the message you want to display, the icon that you want to display, as well as the color of the icon that you would like to display. And in this case, because we want something to happen when the component comes back with a response, we're also passing it a response action. And this is then what the toggle looks for when it gets a response from the component. So just to have a look at that toggle formula, if we go into the onCheck property for that toggle, anybody who's seen any of Sancho's code, you'll see that I stole this from him, the way that he comments his code. Thank you, Sancho.
A lot of theft going on this call today so far.
Sorry, Todd?
I said there's a lot of theft going on today.
Yeah, and the worst part is people are somehow proud of it.
First Dona, now you.
All right, so in the case of the send pic to manager, in the toggle, you'll see there's a switch that runs and evaluates the response that it gets back from the toggle. And because we've sent it the response action of send pic to manager, it then executes this very basic piece of formula to go and check if the user clicked on yes, and if they did, then send this mail to a normal Office 365 email connector. And then after that, we're setting the variable. So this applies to any formula. You can do absolutely anything after this pop-up came back with a response. Other examples of this, like I mentioned earlier, people pickers, which are hugely easy to use, and it just makes life a lot easier to do as well. So this toggle, what's another very cool thing about the toggle, it allows you to consolidate all of your logic and code into one place. So it's very easy for us to, if I wanted to implement a new toggle or a new version of the component, it's very easy for me to just go and copy all of the logic from my existing component or my existing application and then move it across to multiple apps. What's also very cool about that is later on in this demo or later on in the session, we're going to be talking about the app insights. And what you can also do as part of this toggle is send information straight to app insights, and you don't have to go and code it on every single button everywhere in your app. You do it centrally, and then every button that makes use of this functionality will essentially write information to app insights. Right, so we've got a few minutes left for questions. Are there any questions in the chat at the moment?
Where was the question? Does it work in mobile? We answered that and said, yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Let's see. Oh, the link to the GitHub repo. I don't have that one handy. I know you do. You could probably paste it in there. And then,
yeah, so I've got a list of next steps.
Oh, we lost your screen.
Yeah, so it's coming again.
Okay.
All right, so next steps, go to, if you want to make use of this component, go to aka.ms/powerapps-popup, and there's a whole instruction there on how to install it. There's a video coming very soon that you'll be able to use and how to get it up and running. And then I think it's important to realize this community was created by the community for the community. So if you have any questions or suggestions, please let us know so we can make it better for everybody. And then please follow myself, Todd and Sancho on our social streams for updates on this component. We've got a lot of very exciting plans for this going forward. Dave,
do you happen to have the app open that you were sharing with us yesterday that has all the purple buttons, the demo app? I think it would be worth showing everybody that app as well.
Do we still have time?
Quickly, so people can get an understanding of how many different things that, the pop-up can accommodate. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, how much time do I still have?
I think you can spend a minute or two on this, no problem.
All right, cool. So if you go to aka.ms/powerapps-popup, the zip file you're going to download is going to contain a Power App. And in the Power App, you'll find the component. So there's the actual component that's doing all the work. And what we've done is we've built this demo app to make it easy to see what are the kind of pop-ups that are available through the component. And the idea is as we release new versions of this thing, we'll be adding more buttons so you can actually play around with it very easily. So there are all of your OK buttons with links and then with longer text, which allows you to just test how it would scroll if the text exceeds a certain length. So you've got OK, yes, no, cancel, yes, no, cancel, which is just a very basic one like that. And then you've got on the bottom, you've got all your different input types. So there you've got a normal text input, you've got a text array, Office 365 users, rating, and then a slider. So all of these things are fully functional in the app with the toggle and everything you need to get going.
And the best part about it is that, like, right back to the stealing, seems to be our theme today. You can easily go in here and copy the code out of any one of these buttons, and boom, you've got that going in your app as long as you've added the component.
Absolutely, Todd. So if you have a look at the on-select properties for all of this, you'll see there are examples that you can use immediately in your app after installing the component, and then you're off to the races.
It's awesome. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of downloads of this one in the next month or two. Very nice. Lots of people loving it in the chat here too and excited to try it out.
Cool.
Outstanding. Excellent. So Dave's going to be coming back here in just a sec, right, with a little bit more on the pop-up and app insights, with more, like you said, videos and different things you're putting online to make it even easier for people to install it. That's fantastic. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It was a pleasure to work on that with you ahead of time and provide feedback and see all the awesome things you're doing with it. Let's move on to, there we go. All right, so the next one, we're going to tag a team on this one, all three of us, with a little bit of information about Azure Application Insights. And we are actually going to start out on this one with Chuck, showing us a sweet demo of all kinds of neat things you can do out of the box with App Insights now. Chuck, why don't you take it away?
Okay, so actually, a lot of people don't know this. I actually was on the Application Insights team with James Phillips back when we were first kicking it off, and it was part of Visual Studio. So this is actually kind of a home territory for me. And I actually use Application Insights often in non-traditional ways, as Todd actually found out when I first started playing with it. If you haven't looked at Application Insights, it's really, really easy to get started. You log into your Azure portal, and you actually are going out and prompted with these different surfaces. If it doesn't say Application Insights, you can actually just type it in, and that will actually give you your different resources. Now, in this case, you probably don't have a resource, so you go ahead and click on Add, and I've actually gone ahead and got the Add screen already up to save us a little bit of time, give that time back to Todd, and this is actually one of those that were created. This is the important one. This is actually how you tether your application back to this resource itself, so we can do reporting. So let's go ahead and copy that, and you actually see us using that a little bit. Now, if you're not familiar with Application Insights, it's supposed to give you a 360-degree view of your application. What does that mean? What is 360-degree view? Well, the first of all is, what is your code doing on the server? And you'll see I have server response time, server requests. These field requests are actually like exceptions that are in my code running on the server. So that's the inside view. Then there's an outside view, meaning that what does it look like from an external agent or a person running it? What does their experience look like? And that's just availability monitoring. So if I go ahead and click on availability monitoring, I can actually go ahead and see that my Application Insights application was actually typically responsive at a 0.5 millisecond or 700 milliseconds, sorry. And then in this one location in South Central on what time, at 8 a.m., one of my applications took 16 seconds to actually respond. And here's another outlier here. And what you can do is you can actually, from this outside view, set a set of alerts. Like if I see more than 3 or 5 failures from more than 5 or 10 locations across the planet, then alert me. But if it's something that is out of the ordinary, then don't. Okay, I talked about outside and I talked about inside. Well, what else is there? Well, it turns out there's the client experience, the interaction that the client is running on their own browser. So it actually doesn't come back. And that is where the Power Apps events are actually getting logged from, is in that client here. So you can go out and see things like, let me pull up one of the client here. Oh, funnels. Funnels are one of my favorite. So I can go out and see that the onstart of my application showed in the last 24 hours, it shows that I had 13 of these that came in on this particular application. What's interesting is I actually have multiple Power Apps going into a single Power App or Application Insights resource. And then from the application onstart, most people were going into the intro screen. And then finally, the screen that I was really interested in, the one that I actually just added to the app, was the activity feed screen. And I can actually see that this is actually the pathway that these have gone through. Additionally, I can go out and log information from Power Apps itself. Now, what I've done here, I'm going to actually give you an abbreviated version. I've actually gone to my templates, and I think the one that I just did this morning was the shout out. This one here. On my video that I've got, and we're going to make sure and have a link to it, and Todd's actually done a great video as well. I think I did the leave application. So I just took a couple of these and said, how easy or how difficult is it to go out and do a implement for Application Insights with my Power App? And the way I've done that is gone into the app, of that brand new template. So this is just a template that I started, that I showed you. And you'll see that there's a brand new property here called the instrumentation key. Where did I get that? Let's go ahead and go back here. Oh, back here. I guess I need to go back here. And we're going to go back to overview. And this is actually this right here. So I went out and copied that. And that's where I got it for here. Now, anytime I actually start the application, it's going to start sending telemetry. Now, that's not a lot of telemetry. Todd's going to show you some use cases where he's actually gone out and put it in all kinds of places where he would actually do error handling or just logic flow. But you'll see that I've actually gone out and done it as a send a smile. And if I go out and take a look at one of my send a smiles, let's go ahead and go back into those components and go out, and you'll see that it's really simple syntax. It goes out and says, what do you want to send that telemetry through? And what is the severity? And what is the package that you want to send through? And me and Todd were just talking about this. Normally, you don't have to cast these integers as strings. And I was testing it last night, and if we are going to fix this, but if it was actually an integer, it actually does not send this entire record. The record doesn't come across, but you still get information sent through this trace. It is things like default. So actually, let's go ahead and take a look at one of those. If I go to my logs, and then I go out and go to my traces, and let's go ahead and take a look at it. And let's blow away this limit 50, and I'll run traces. And you'll see that I've got a whole bunch of these send us smiles. So if I go out and take a look at one of these, you will actually see that here is my SAT value that I sent to. So that was actually a happy one. Where did it come from? So this is actually from a different app. This is actually not even from the shout out app, because actually I called it something different. So I must have been running another application at the same time. And what you'd probably want to do as well is maybe send in screen names. And Todd's actually going to show you how he's sending in, building a record to actually populate that. So that's actually pretty cool. This is actually a pretty brief version of what you'd send through. Also, what you might want to be sensitive of, I've actually seen people do this, is you grab a lot of PII data and you start sending that in through your traces. That could be great for debugging, but it also may be breaking you into privacy jail in some places. So you might want to think about that. Okay, now that I've got my traces that actually I can go ahead and run, the next thing I wanted to show you guys how to do now that it's all instrumented is go ahead and actually export to Power BI. And if I go out and take a look at this text file, what you'll see is I actually get the M language sent for me. So I can go ahead and go Control A, Control C, go back into here to my favorite analytics tool, Power BI, and I can actually see, I don't know, again, I didn't spend a lot of time on this report, but if I click on maybe Edge, you'll see that the people are happier in Edge, and obviously since I only have 2 browsers, that means they're quite a bit less happy in Chrome as far as just the general distribution. So I actually may go back and take a look at why are those people having issues on Chrome? Is it the Chrome, or is it maybe the Windows operating system or something else that they're doing? I can actually go ahead and filter this down. How did I get that data in here? Well, you saw me actually copy in that. So let's go ahead and do a get data, blank query. And I'm going to go to the advanced editor. There we go. Get rid of that. Paste in the stuff that I just got from from my application insights export. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is hit done. At this point, you're going to want to clean this up, and you actually can't access your custom dimension. This is actually where your information was sent. You can actually see that SAT smile, but it's actually all compressed into a JSON packet. So let's go ahead and actually go ahead and do transform in JSON. And now I can go ahead and, one thing you'll want to do, especially if you start playing with it, you're going to have a lot of app loads, and it takes about, last night I was saying about 6 minutes for this information to come through. Make sure and refresh the data to make sure you get all the latest records. At this point, if you went out and built a report on it, it probably wouldn't work, because some of those, like the app on starts and the application telemetry itself, didn't have this custom dimension. It doesn't actually even supply a custom dimension. And what you're going to want to do is actually go ahead and just remove errors. And you're going to want to do that in a couple different places. You probably want to actually even filter where it doesn't have nulls and you have real values coming in, because your custom dimensions probably in all cases sent in a username, etc. At that point, you can go ahead and build this report that actually was just taking a look at. I think I actually did a little bit of binning to actually be able to count, separate it by the minute, because what happens is you get it in a time argument, and Power BI by default only lets you break it down to the day, not even the hour. And I wanted it broken down into the minute. So in this report, I actually went ahead and grabbed that data from Application Insights. So Todd, that's kind of what I wanted to show in a very, very brief time.
Quick question for you popped up here.
Yeah, go ahead.
From Roma, it's what about performance issues on loading and updating the data? I know you talked about how there is a little lag and you need to set up a refresh, but you run into any issues on getting the data from App Insights into Power BI with that M query?
Oh, you mean actually the getting it back out of Application Insights? Actually, I thought it was talking about the ingress getting into it, because that's actually the #1 Application Insights call generator is, hey, I don't see my data. But you're actually talking about the egress of getting it back out. I haven't seen any cases, but there is only a 90-day retention for your Application Insights data, and you can actually generate a lot of data. So to go out and do it the way I've done it, which is a REST call every single time you want to go out and get a refresh, is probably a very poor, not probably, it is a very poor way of actually doing analytics of your application. What you are going to want to do, getting back to what that person's question was, and I missed their name, by the way, Todd, is you're going to want to, you're going to want to set up something called a data flow, or some other actually analytics cube, if you will. So that way you can store it continuously, and you'd go out and just have a refresh. So let's say that once a day you go out and get the day's telemetry. Matter of fact, that's one thing that you might want to be aware of, is that even if you go out and blow away, remember how I actually got rid of the last 50, and if I go out and set the trace to be some custom, I found that Application Insights tries to do the right thing and say, hey, you only want it for the last 10 days or 17 days. So if you go out and take a look at that end query, wherever it was, you'll actually see at the top there is a time zone, and you're going to almost certainly, here it is, it's right, in this case it's 1 day. Even if you actually blow that setting away, it hard codes it back in your M code, and the easiest thing, of course, to do there is just make it go away. And now you actually get all the data regardless of going all the way back. And again, that could be quite large. So I haven't seen performance issues, but this is not a best practice in the way to do it. So Todd, great question.
I didn't know you were on the App Insights team before.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I've been using that product since the start, and if I recall correctly, App Insights by default will store your data for 90 days, correct?
That is correct. Absolutely.
And you can also enable a job on App Insights without writing any code that will copy your App Insights data to a location such as Azure Table Storage, which is only 4 cents a gig a month.
Or
if you need your data beyond 90 days, then you'd want to set that up, wouldn't you? And then connect your Power BI to that cold data instead of the hot data.
Yeah, and in addition to the blob storage itself, you can actually pipe it to a Hadoop cluster, which I found out the hard way is a lot more than 12 cents a gigabyte or whatever the number is. So yeah, you don't want to be turning a bunch of those on and storing a whole lot of Application Insights data unless you have deep pockets and you need that functionality.
You don't want to do that to Cosmos DB either.
That's right. Exactly right.
I know someone who did that one time. Yeah, that's awesome. Great out-of-the-box tour there. So I'm going to take it a little bit one step further and talk about how could you use this out of the box plus your own pieces to do App Insights, and why would you want to choose one way or the other, or maybe a hybrid of both? I love how you used the App Insights there to actually store data beyond the data of the usage of the app itself too, for the were they happy or sad. That's such a cool pattern.
One of the questions I ask my team all the time, because they go out and say, oh, lots of people are using that functionality. I'm like, yeah, but are they happy with it? Just because you're forced to go out and do an on-start or file new, a lot of people will do file new. Is it a good experience? And you actually probably need to give them a way of actually letting you know. So I would suggest putting this into your pop-up dialogues, your screens, and just because you're using it a lot doesn't mean that they're happy with the experience. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Everyone also needs to watch your video on that because you go a lot more in depth and you show it step by step. So if anyone's wondering whoa, that was quick, how do I do it step by step? Watch the video. You'll see it on the link here in a couple slides. Chuck does a great job in step by step there. So as we look at App Insights and how we integrate that with Power Apps, I'd like to compare the approaches of the out-of-the-box, as you see on the left side of the slide here, versus the custom approach on the right. So I'm just going to go top to bottom. Out of the box, when you're running and you expect it to be logging App Insights, that's not happening while you're in the editor. That only happens when you publish the app and you run the published version of the app. The first time that I did this, I missed that note in the blog post about it, and I thought it was broken. So don't run into the same thing. It can be a little more helpful, though, when you're doing custom code the logged App Insights yourself, because you don't have to actually publish every change, bounce over, and run the runtime version to see if the code you're writing is doing what you intend it to do. The second thing is the instrumentation key, that GUID to App Insights that ties the Power App to App Insights, that doesn't travel between environments. So what I mean by that is if you export a Power App that you've hooked in to App Insights and defined an instrumentation key for, and now you import it into a new environment, the key is lost. It's not a big deal to go copy and paste the key from one spot to another. Perhaps you'd even want to have one App Insights instance set up for production and another for development. I know I would, but that's something to keep in mind. If you're using a custom pattern to do App Insights, you don't paste the key into the Power App. You actually have to build some kind of mechanism or an environment variable or place to set that in your Power App. And therefore, it easily can be transitioned between different environments. Out of the box, as I'm going to show you in just a second, you can write traces, views, and events with the out-of-the-box App Insights functions. You can take it a lot further if you wrap your own code around App Insights API and then call and write in like that. You can write events, views, or exceptions with that approach. Out-of-the-box approach, it traces everything. The app loaded, you went to a new page, etc. When you do your custom tracing, you'll need to put every single trace into the app where you want to put it in and call it yourself. So Chuck, this is the one where I was confused. You just demonstrated this is not the message property. This was the set value inside of a message where you can only use strings. Another thing about App Insights here, you can't use it in flows with this approach. It's not going, if you call a flow from your Power App, App Insights doesn't know anything or report on anything after the flow started running. It can tell you before and after what happened in the Power App, but you lose visibility of the flow. If you write your own custom logging capability, you can also trace all the way into your flow. This is the biggest difference, though. You don't write any code to do the one that Chuck just showed. And in the example that I'm about to show you where you dig in deeper, if you need to extend it to do other things than what it does out of the box, you do have to write code. Thankfully, I've open sourced and made videos on all this, and so you can download the Azure Insight functions that wrap the App Insights API, and then just call them from a custom connector, and you're all set in your Power App. Now, I really think that we will see a lot of scenarios where there's a hybrid. I think you'll see scenarios where people are using out of the box so they don't have to inject App Insights tracing code everywhere in their app. But I think you'll also see people using the custom one to write to the same App Insights instance so that they can get more verbose and succinct in how they're logging things in AI. So let me show you a little quick demo of what these differences look like here. This is the Power App that I have created that allows me to test things in App Insights. And I've had this Power App around for a couple of years now, made some videos on it and done conferences on it. So you may have seen it before. This Power App right here, if I go look at the actual app, you can see I've tied it to an instrumentation key right there. That one is also indicated right down here at the bottom. See where my out-of-the-box instrumentation key? It's the same as the one that's in the app there. Then I also have other instrumentation keys where I'm writing to other places in App Insights via this custom approach. To write with the out-of-the-box approach that Chuck showed, this is the function you call in a Power App. You call trace, and he showed you this where he passed that data in, and when he clicked the different smiley faces. You pass in your message, you pass in the severity level, and then the payload of everything about that message you want to tell App Insights. The thing that I'm pointing out here in this demo is this trace severity. Notice it can be information critical. I'm down here at the bottom of the screen. Error. Those are the three things. There's actually another, you can't see it because of the screen there, but it's warning. There it is. So what I did is I've wired these buttons up. So when I click it, it's just going to trace in a warning, an error, information critical. I also have other things in this app, and without getting in depth on what these things do, I'm just going to, how they work, I'm going to show you the code that's writing with the custom approach to App Insights. This string you see right here is the name of a custom connector I created with those Azure functions that I talked about in the previous slide. One of those Azure functions is called track exception. And so here, this is my homegrown approach to log to App Insights. So let me show you what the difference looks like, so you don't have to figure this out on your own. Here I'm looking at the data that was written out of the box by just plugging in the GUID to my Power App and then running my Power App and stepping through it. So let me start and show you when I open the app and some of the different things that I did inside of it. Here's the on-start event. It gets written automatically, and if you look at the left-hand side here, you can see all the events that happen in chronological order, as well as all the events that happen with this given session that someone did. It's very handy. If I come back here and I take a closer look, though, I can see that then it says my app started, and I can come into that event and see where that happens in the whole big story. I have a page view that I looked at the home page. Then these are different traces that I wrote with my own code. Here's the ones from those buttons I pointed out. Trace severity.critical, .error, and .warning. Notice they're all indicated as a trace. They all have this same green color, and their severity level is different. So it's a little bit hard to tell them apart. However, if I write my own code to write to App Insights, I can represent this information differently here. For example, this is an exception. You can see I'm actually writing exceptions, I'm writing page views, and I'm writing custom events. If I look at how those play out, you can see that they're different in here with my custom approach versus my out-of-the-box approach. Things get grouped differently. This may or may not be a big deal to you. Maybe you're like, that out-of-the-box thing works fine for me. On the other hand, maybe you're like, well, you know what? I really like the exception reporting capabilities of App Insights, and I want the ability to dig down in on an exception with all this call stack information that may or may not be available depending where you're calling out of. But this is just a quick glimpse for you on the differences between the two approaches. There's no right or wrong one. You may want to take and combine them both, as I said before. If you're interested in seeing the demo that talks about how do you take the custom approach, as Chuck mentioned, I have a video about that as well as code samples and everything to get you going step by step there. Okay, moving back into the rest of our presentation here is We don't have time to show this now, but I do want to mention a final piece of the puzzle, and that Dave was going to show this. The component that Dave showed you earlier tied to App Insights. So do you remember when there was the action on what do you do after you close the component? What does that component pass back to the app? Part of that process could be invoking the out-of-the-box or your own custom tracing functionality with App Insights. So usually the reason we bring that up is if you have an error, you pop a pop-up and tell someone about that in your app. Might as well report it to App Insights when you tell them about it at the same time. So that is also a really nice combination of things that work together on the call here today. Steal the component, steal Dona's training, steal my Azure functions. Don't go to jail and become a Power Apps hero today. So our next piece is the resources. Where do you get all this? So I'll just quickly go over it. Chuck's blog post, how to log App Insights telemetry here, and logging App Insights from Power Apps. All the resources we talked about during the presentation you'll find on this page. There's a lot of cool stuff that came out in Power Apps in the last month. Here is a tiny bit of it. This Wave 1 updates is big. I encourage you to read that. A lot of things in there. I don't know if anyone's seen the mixed reality stuff for Power Apps yet. That's totally sweet. Teams integration, geospatial features. Another way to say that is the maps got better in Power Apps, a whole lot better. You should definitely check that out. And then I think most importantly, what we're all going through here and working from home now, the pandemic that we're in, Microsoft stepped right up super quick. And is this an example on how fast you can build with the Power Platform or what? They've already got a Power Platform solution for healthcare emergency response, published, done, and ready to go and published to your environment. So if that's something that could help your company, I highly suggest you check that out as well. Brings us to the community contributions. Look at all these awesome folks tweeting with the Power Apps CC hashtag. This is just something we like to do to kind of advertise our call and feel more like a community. So thank you to all the folks here who are sharing all the incredible things they're working on and resharing other things they see other people work on. I encourage you to follow this hashtag, even if you're not using it, because if you just go through the laundry list of tweets that come out of this, it's like one awesome learning opportunity after another. Donna, maybe you could add that to your training. Finally, the PowerAddicts Hangout. I'd like to remind everybody about the PowerAddicts Hangout. The last one was last night. Unfortunately, I couldn't join. I was working on things for work at the time, but this is another awesome, essentially community type call where people from all over the world get together, share what they're doing on Power Apps and help each other out. So check that out, and you can always learn great things here. Donna talked about this one earlier today, and we always have this slide as part of our presentation now. So you can definitely go check out her playlist and watch all those awesome videos that she's putting together. And Donna, I'd love to come on too. I've got a cool demo or two I would love to show you. And
yeah,
so,
I told you I'm looking for good victims. So if you've got demos, I already know I want Rez on to show his Power Apps MR thingy. And Todd, we want you on as well. So hey, we're all stranded at home. It's a very good time to, volunteer yourself before you get voluntold.
Outstanding. And, I'd say it's the same holds for anyone on the call here, right? You got something cool to show, want to show it to the community, get a hold of you, right? Awesome. All right. So that brings us to our very end today. So we'd all like to say thank you for joining us and spending your morning, afternoon, or evening with us today as we chatted about Power Apps. The recording is always available on the Microsoft 365 developer channel on YouTube. You can also see the link to the recording is always posted on that Twitter alias there. Thanks again, everybody, for being here today. You all stay safe out there, and we will see you next month on May 20th.
Thank you.
Thanks,
everyone.
Todd.